time there was a little girl named Stella. Stella loved to play, just like you. Stella loved animals, just like you. And Stella loved to read books, just like you. One day, Stella and her brother Larry went to the park. They ran all the way there. Can you do that part with me? They ran all the way there. And when they got to the park, they went on the swings. Get on the swings with Stella and Larry. Here we go. Whee! 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 When they were done playing on the swings, they went on the slides. They climbed up the slide. Can you do that part with me? They climbed up the slide, and then whoosh, they went down. And then again, up, and down, whoosh. And one more time, up, and down, whoosh. And then Larry said, Stella, push me on the merry-go-round. And so she did. She pushed and she pushed. And Larry went around and around and around and around. Whoa! Until he didn't want to go around anymore. Larry went over to play in the sandbox, and Stella went over to her big oak tree where there was a low branch. She climbed up on that low branch and she pulled her book out of her backpack and she began to read. When all of a sudden, right there, right below her, she looked and she saw the most wonderful, the most beautiful, the prettiest looking bright orange bushy-tailed fox. Stella saw that fox and it seemed as if that fox was trying to tell her something. Well, Stella, she looked that fox right in the eyes, and that fox looked Stella right in the eyes. And then that fox, it seemed like, told her to come along, and the fox took off. And Stella just had to follow. And so she climbed down out of her tree. The fox went swish, swish, swish through the tall grasses. So Stella went swish, swish, swish through the tall grasses, chasing after that fox. And then the fox went over the river. Can you do that part with me? Splash, splash, splash. And so Stella went over the river, splash, 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 chasing after that bright orange bushy-tailed fox. And then the fox went tunnel, 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 tunnel through a hollow log. And so what did Stella do? Stella went tunnel, 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 tunnel through that hollow log. The fox disappeared. Well, Stella got to the end of that log and she about disappeared as well. And before she could even think about it, sure enough, she went right down a hole in the ground. Can you do that part with me? Wiggle your tongue and then roll your arms. Stella went right down the hole in the ground. Plop! Stella landed on a tuffet. Oh, you're not sure what a tuffet is? Oh, I think you know. Have you heard the nursery rhyme? Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey, when along came a spider that sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. And that's why she wasn't there on her tuffet when Stella fell. So she landed right there on that little hill of grass, and she looked around, and it seemed as if the flowers that were in the meadow there were looking right at her. And then the flowers spoke to her. Little girl, what are you doing here? She was a little bit surprised that flowers would speak to her, but she just answered them. She said, I am looking for a bright orange bushy-tailed fox. Have you seen him? I'm sure he came this way. And the flowers, they looked around at each other, and then they looked right at Stella, and they said, oh, no, shaking their petals. Can you shake your petals? Oh, no, they said. We haven't seen him. Do you know what kind of flowers were there in that field? Yes, red tulips and, yes, yellow buttercups and orange poppies and blue flag iris and purple violets. My favorite, white trillium, because they were right along the edge of a woodland. All those beautiful flowers were looking right at Stella as she got up off of that tuffet and began to walk right through the flowers. But before she left them behind, a blue flag iris reached out and handed Stella a map. It was a beautiful map. There were painted flowers all around the outside edge of it. There was a beautiful river painted on the map, and along the river was a path, and there were animals all along the path. And then, at the very end, at the very top of corner, was a rock den and a beautiful painting of a bright orange bushy-tailed fox. Oh, it's a treasure map, thought Stella. I am so happy. This is one of the best gifts I've ever received. I could just use this map to find the bright orange bushy-tailed fox. And so she looked at that map and she studied it and she saw that the first thing on the path was a cow. Well, that wasn't too unusual. It was a big field. And so Stella took off running. Can you do that part with Stella? She took off running, and she ran along and ran along and ran along until all of a sudden, there, right in front of her, kind of right where the map had told her it would be, was a cow. But what really surprised Stella was that there was a bear also. The cow and the bear were playing together in the field. This was something that Stella had never seen before. It was pretty special. And they went off paw in paw to play. Well, that surprised Stella quite a bit. This was really a special place. But Stella, she looked at that map and she began to run along with Stella. She ran through that field, through that meadow. She ran along until all of a sudden something even more surprising than she saw before. Right on the path was a goat. Ma, 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 ma. Well, it wasn't that there was a goat that was surprising. No, what was surprising was that the goat and the leopard were having a conversation. Ma, 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 ma. And then the goat and the leopard went off together. This was a very amazing place. Stella looked at her map one last time, and there on the map was another indication of where she was supposed to go before she would find that fox's den. She put the map in her pocket and she began to run. She ran along and she ran along and she ran along. Well, she didn't get very far when all of a sudden she found, right on the path, like she was expecting to see, a lamb. Bah, bah. Well, what was exciting was that the lamb was not alone. No, that lamb was in the field dancing with a wolf.
Oh, hey, hello there, hello. Well, little lamb, are you ready to begin? A tango and a salsa. Woohoo! I love to dance with you, little lamb.
Ba, ba. And the wolf and the lamb went along dancing together. This was a very exciting place. Stella was not sure what to do about it, but she knew she needed to look at her map again, so she pulled it out of her pocket and she looked at her map, and just then, She looked up, and the wind was blowing through her hair. The wind was blowing the trees over. The trees were bending low to the ground as the wind came rolling in. It came up to the river, and the river was splashing, splashing, splashing against the shoreline. And then the wind came and just snatched that map right out of Stella's hand and rolled on across the field. Oh no! Oh no, oh no, Stella thought. What am I going to do without my map? How will I ever find the bright orange bushy-tailed fox? Stella was just about to cry when she realized that she could do this. This was something that she could do for herself. She could find that fox. And just then, on the path where she was, came a frog. Ribbit, ribbit. And that frog just hopped right in front of Stella and said, "You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. Hop along, hop along, hop along, hop along." And so Stella did. She began to hop along. She ran right down that path along the river until all of a sudden she just stopped. She wasn't quite sure why she was stopping until she looked and she saw right there, walking along the path in front of a rock den, just like the one that she saw in the painting on the map, was that bright orange bushy-tailed fox. Stella looked at the fox, and the fox looked at Stella. And they just sat there for a moment, enjoying one another's company, when all of a sudden, the face of that fox began to turn and move and shift and change, and that face of that fox became the face of a lion. That lion gave a terrible roar. And it frightened Stella so much that she fell out of her tree branch. And she landed on the ground. And the wind was blowing the pages of her book that had fallen onto the ground with her. And standing over her with his hands on his hips was Larry. "Stella, I'm hungry. My tummy is rumbling. It's grumbling. It's just about roaring. I'm so hungry. Please take me home for lunch, Stella." Stella took Larry by the hand and they went home. She put him in the kitchen at the kitchen table and gave him a snack. And then Stella went to her room and she got out her notebook and she wrote down that story. And she was just about done writing when she remembered something, and she opened her notebook up one more time and she wrote, "And Stella lived happily ever after." And that's the story by me, Karen Wendt, called Stella and the Fox.